The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Nordic is giving away $15 million Best Ball Mania 5. Sign the promo code SGPN to claim your first-time positive offer of $2 bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy. Promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL picks and projections are now live. Claim your set free trial today by going to sportsgamblingbox.com, rhythmsportsgamblingbox.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Sunday morning, roughly 11 a.m. Eastern Time on August 4th. I'm your host, as always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a short episode because there's only one match to talk about. It's officially final time in D.C. So we're going to talk about the final between Cobolli and Korda in a little while. Before we get into any of that, though, do want to recap what happened in the last couple episodes, actually, for the Washington semis as well as the Olympic episode that we had for the bronze medal and the gold medal matches. Before we get into any of that, though, I want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. A reminder also that you can still support the show if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple. You can still leave a rating and a review. So either way, you can show some support. Leave a like and subscribe, though, if you end up watching the show on YouTube. And hopefully you've enjoyed the content so far. Plus, a reminder that we also have some merch on the SGPN merch store. We have a lot of great and very affordable shirts and sweatshirts and mugs on the merch store. Check it out, and I do think you'll definitely find yourself something that you do like on the merch store. A reminder also that we have other shows with the network, obviously, and a lot of them do have merchandise as well on the merch store. And the featured show for the week is actually the Mothership Show, the Sports Camp Podcast, which did launch their 32 NFL team previews, and you are looking at a bonus for each team preview episode because all of them contain an individual code word, and if you submit the 32 code word phrase, you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circle Future bet. Plus, a reminder, subscribe where you get your podcasts, and a reminder to download the SGPN app. Starting off with the recap, we're going to do Washington last. We are going to go through the recap of the Olympics first, then we'll segue into it. Was going to initially save the breakdown of the gold medal matchup, but I think in reality, we kind of have to cover it because it just happened. So we're going to go through the Olympics first. Starting off, though, with the Olympic episode for the Lock and Dog. Ended up going 0-2. What a brutal loss for the Lock. For the Lock, we had Alcaraz team total over 12.5 at -120, who lost in straight sets as around a -270 favorite, and he landed 12 because he lost both sets in tie breaks. So pretty rough there for the Lock for a loss. For the Dog, ended up losing as Musetti won the match, but he lost the second set 6-1 as that ended up killing our spread. So two pretty annoying losses for the Olympic episode as we ended up going 0-2 there with kind of, I don't want to say incorrect reads on the matches. We thought Alcaraz would win, but I thought Djokovic would be very competitive in the match for at least one set. I didn't think he'd win, but I do think that Alcaraz was going to have a bit of a struggle compared to what most people thought. And I was right about that. Unfortunately, he struggled so much he lost the match. As for Musetti, he won. I was never really worried about him winning. Unfortunately, though, he did win the first set, then he dropped the second, then he won the third, but I believe he only won by one game on the spread, so picked up a loss there. For Washington, I'll recap the matches in greater depth in a second, but Cobolli and Shelton went over 22.5 at -125, went to 3 sets, so nice win there. Dog, though, ended up losing as Tiafoe got buried and ended up losing in straight sets to Korda. So once again, not a great, I'd say, couple of days for us in tennis for the actual Lock and Dog picks, going 1-3 in the last 2 episodes. But point is, I do want to recap those matches because the Olympic ones, I really don't think we had that bad of a read on those. And I do think at the end of the day, sometimes when you end up getting a decent read on the actual match, you get one small thing wrong and you lose your bet anyway. But we had a shot to win both, and it just didn't work out. So starting off with the recap of the bronze and gold medal matches. Not going to spend too much time on the bronze medal match, but Musetti got the job done. Felix did a good job, though, of responding in the second set as he was able to win the second set 6-1 after breaking back in the 4-3 game to get back on serve. Then he got broken again, and then he ended up losing the final game there in the first set. But Musetti ended up basically punting the second set, and then he responded by, I don't want to say dominating the third set, but he looked very sharp in the third set, got the break, and eventually held to win the match. So we thought he'd win. Great season for Musetti, and it continues as he was able to kind of put a stamp on the last 2 months with a bronze medal. So good for him. As for Felix, he ended up losing to, or lost in the bronze medal game, did still leave the Olympics with a medal because he did win mixed doubles for bronze. So nice job by him. Besides that, you had the Americans who ended up actually winning silver and bronze in doubles, as you ended up seeing Ram and Krajicek lose in 3 sets, it was an absolute war. It was actually the slimmest of margins possible because it went to the first to 10 breaker, and it was 10-8. So you ended up seeing Ebden, who ended up winning in doubles. Good for him. And then you ended up having the gold medal matchup. So this one is going to, I don't want to say I'm not going to spend so much time breaking this down, but it was actually an incredible match, and I have to give it the respect that it's actually due. So giving the actual breakdown of the match in particular, Joker, at the end of the day, turned back the clock, and he played like it was 2000 and I don't even know, 2016. He was incredible for about 2 hours. Alcaraz, I thought, was fine. It just seemed like at the end of the day, Alcaraz had a couple of golden opportunities in the first set to go up a break, and then once he was unable to convert, Joker's first serve was actually really good in the second set, percentage-wise. And it just seemed like Alcaraz really didn't have any opportunities to fully capitalize on a weak service play by Djokovic because his first serve percentage was so high. It just seemed like Alcaraz was constantly in rallies, but Joker was just too solid, and he turned into a wall half the time. And it just seemed like Alcaraz just could not break through the wall. And that's kind of the story of the matchup. I'm not going to say that Alcaraz played poorly. I didn't think he played badly. I thought Alcaraz actually played very well, and I think Alcaraz would have probably beaten anybody else on tour if that was like the match he played in the gold medal against anybody besides Djokovic that day. But it seemed like Alcaraz played well, and Djokovic just seemed to be in great form. I thought Djokovic had a shot to make it interesting. I didn't think he'd win. I'm very, very happy that he did win. But at the end of the day, we saw Djokovic not drop a set in the entire event, which is absolutely nuts. Joker's 37. He just won the gold medal on clay, not dropping a set. And he had no titles entering the event for the entire year, which is insane. Plus, Djokovic won his first ever gold medal at the Olympics. It was the one thing missing on his trophy case. He won every other singles achievement imaginable except for the gold medal, and now he finally got it done. He was already the greatest of all time, but now I think you can I don't think you can argue about it anymore. I think the argument kind of died a couple years ago, but people were still arguing for Nadal or Federer. He has every single title that's possible on singles. You can't beat that. Joker is the best of all time. He's at 37, and he's out-dueling Alcaraz for a gold medal in a phenomenal, basically a 3-hour match. And it just seemed like Joker, once he fully cut down on the unforced errors, Alcaraz was, I don't want to say a ticking time bomb, but it seemed like Djokovic was going to force Alcaraz to hit through him, and he was not going to give away any free points. It just seemed like in the breaker especially, Joker in that second set breaker was basically flawless. I don't know how he could have played better in that tiebreak. He had the running, insane cross-court winner, and then from that point forward, it was over. But you're looking at the breaker, and I believe it was originally a 2-0 Joker in that breaker. Then Alcaraz won 2 straight points to make it 2-2, and then Joker won the final 5 points. Joker played a perfect tiebreak, hit basically no unforced errors, and Alcaraz was sprinkling in drop shots. He looked good for the most part, but at the end of the day, every single rally that was long, or that was a very, intense rally, most of them ended with Alcaraz either hitting a winner or an unforced error because Joker was not punting away free points. That seemed to be a vintage Joker performance, and he was able to get over the finish line to win his first ever gold medal. Now, the interesting dynamic of the actual match is trying to regrade Joker's season up to this point because he had 0 titles entering August. So, on one hand, that's an abysmal season. On the other hand, Joker did make the final in... I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. He ended up making the final in Wimbledon. He made the semis in the Australian Open, and he got injured in the French Open. So his season hasn't actually been that bad, and now he has a gold medal. I don't know if I can actually call Joker's season successful, but he won a gold medal, something he has never done before. So you can kind of argue that Joker kind of salvaged his entire season on reputation based on what he's done over the last couple weeks. But Joker had a phenomenal tournament. Not dropping a set at 37 is insane. Good for him. No shame to Alcaraz, though. I know he was a favorite. I'm sure a lot of people had him. I don't think anybody had Joker to win the match, just based on the overall public perception after what happened in Wimbledon. But the fact that he tore something in his knee a couple weeks ago, made the final in Wimbledon, I don't care how easy the schedule was, that's still an incredible achievement. And then he ended up winning the gold medal on clay, is incredible. And that tells you why Joker's the best player of all time. Now, I do have a brief rant I want to get into for the actual Olympics, which is the coverage that I want to talk about. Because I think the coverage of Olympic tennis for the last couple of weeks has been absolutely atrocious. And I want to just kind of rant about it because you're thinking of all the events that have been on TV for the last couple of weeks. Think about it for a second. Think of all the random fencing and badminton and ping pong and equestrian, all the random events you've seen, shooting, like all this other stuff that's on random channels. You wake up in the morning for the gold medal match in tennis. You see Alcaraz is playing Joker, which is one of the most important matches of the entire year. It's the rivalry of all rivalries right now, and you're looking at the overall spot where it's going to be the marquee event on Sunday. There's no other event that's going to come close to it, the gold medal matchup based on ratings, TV ratings between Alcaraz and Djokovic. You're going through the channels when you wake up in the morning, and you see, all right, channel 4, NBC. We got women's gymnastics. Okay, we're going to go to another channel. What's USA showing? They're showing fencing. All right, great. What's E showing? E showing equestrian. Great. What's this other channel showing? They're showing a bunch of other random stuff. You're telling me that Alcaraz Joker for a gold medal in tennis is on the NBC streaming site? You're telling me it's not on actual TV. Are you out of your mind? The coverage of tennis from NBC and company has been a disgrace. And the fact that the gold medal match was not on TV between Djokovic and Alcaraz is appalling. I have to mention it. It's embarrassing. I hope your ratings for equestrian on E were really top notch. You blew it. You would have gotten millions of views if you ended up showing the match on TV. So that's an embarrassing display by the Olympic coverage and by the NBC family, I guess. Damn, that was awful. So I had to pull up the streaming site. I ended up finding it. But the fact you had to go out of your way to actually find the gold medal match, and the fact that it wasn't directly on TV is embarrassing, and I got to mention it. Now, I see Cayetano mentioning how people were being disrespectful to Djokovic, how plus 250 was a bit insane. I mean, when I went through the match, the odds were actually cheaper. I think the odds were like minus 220, plus 190 on Joker. And even though I picked Alcaraz, I predicted a war. I was not willing to fully dismiss Joker like most people were. And I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much because I did pick Joker to lose. But a lot of people were expecting Joker to absolutely get destroyed. I didn't see that happening. I thought it was going to be close. That's why I like the team total over. I thought you were going to get maybe one breaker in there. Maybe you'd get one somewhat lopsided set, or maybe you'd go 3. I was willing to give Djokovic, the best player of all time, some respect. Not all the way, but the odds makers and how people responded to the betting odds basically disrespected the greatest player of all time. That I'll agree with you on. As for me personally, I'm not going to put myself entirely on that camp because I gave Joker more of a fighting chance than most people did, as far as I'm concerned. I see Cayetano mentioning that he found it on Peacock. You get my point. You have to go on Peacock to see the best player of all time play against the future face of tennis, one of the best players of all time when it's all said and done, because Alcaraz is going to be a top player of all time. You couldn't find it on TV. Embarrassing. I got to mention that. Anyway, once again, congrats to Joker. He becomes, I believe, the 5th player ever, male or female, to complete the Golden Slam, winning all 4 Grand Slams and winning the gold medal. So congrats to him for getting the job done. We'll see if the momentum carries over into the hardcourt season for the next couple of months and the U.S. Open. Moving on, though, to the recap of Washington for the semis. We're at the 14-minute mark. There's one match to preview in the episode. It just is what it is. I'm going to go through these matches. Not going to spend too much time on it because the matches were pretty straightforward. Shelton ended up having a marathon against Caboli, and he ended up blowing a set lead. He had a couple break points as well in the second set. Did not convert, though, as he ended up losing in 3. So Caboli, good job by him. And Caboli cashes us another bet on him as we the over 22.5 games with the lock. Now, Caboli, we don't actually have awards for this show where we do like an end of season recap and we like give out awards for like most profitable player or stuff like that. If we did, Caboli would be in the running for like best player that we've had money on because I don't think he's lost a bet for us the entire year. We backed him a couple times early in the year on hard court, and I'm pretty sure we're like 5-0 on locker dog picks with Caboli. He just cashes every single bet that we have with him in, and we had the over, and he got there. So nice job by Caboli once again. And you saw Shelton, who, if you really look at how he plays tennis, I know he's made a couple of runs in Grand Slams where he's actually been respectable showings, but he's really not great. And I feel like most people acknowledge it, but people aren't willing to really admit it. U.S. tennis, I know Korda's making the final, but you have Tiafoe and you have Shelton, and they kind of just sum up U.S. tennis for the last 10 years. If you want to just describe the overall disappointment era of overall just USA tennis for the last 20 years. I feel like Tiafoe and Shelton are a pretty good summary of it, personally. But either way, Korda got the job done in straight sets against Tiafoe. Nothing really else to add there. I do want to point out, though, it's not really a rant, but I mentioned it in the last episode. Tiafoe gets so much hype for DC every year because it's his background, because of just his overall hometown, and because of the fact that he has a lot of overall support, and the crowd is always on his side. I believe Tiafoe's entered the DC City Open about 9 times in his career. You know how many times he's made the final? 0. He's overrated as hell in DC, and we saw it again last night. He'll have a couple of great moments. He beat Rublev. He's had a couple of nice wins over the years. He always loses. He never makes the final, and that's also why I thought Korda would beat him in the match on Saturday. So I'm not going to really dive much more into those two matches. Pretty straightforward. Won the lock, lost the dog. Korda kind of killed Tiafoe. I believe Tiafoe had a break point in the first game of the match, and then Korda never faced a break point ever again. So that was kind of the summary of it. Korda served too well. Tiafoe had a bad service game in both sets, and Korda got the job done. So either way, point is you ended up seeing a pretty straightforward sets of tennis with that matchup, and now we have a fun matchup between Korda and between Cobolli for the final on Sunday, taking place at around 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyway, time to actually get into the preview of the final between Korda and Cobolli. Before getting into that, though, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because they just launched their underdog streaks, and you've hit your first 2 pick'em entries, then you can go streaking. If you go 11-0, you can win 1,000 times your money. Plus, WrestleMania is now live with $15 million in prizes, United specials, and boosts on all flex entries. I mentioned in the last couple episodes my choice for an entry was Karlik Jones higher on his points against Serbia, and he got there. He had 17. I believe his line was 15.5 or 16.5. As for the actual upcoming matchups, well, you can go for baseball, something related in baseball, or you could go with something Olympic related as well for your entries. Sign the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and first time positive offer of $2 bonus cash on fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Game Time. I know but all of you, by personal love attending sporting events, and it used to be very difficult to actually find a ticketing platform that I could trust, but that changed once I found Game Time. If you want to potentially go to a baseball game, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Price on Game Time's app actually go down closer to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And my favorite feature is, of course, the image of seat to use, which helps me a lot, because I used to have issues trying to game plan which seat was the best, trying to find out if I was going to be getting a pull or some type of obstruction in my line of view. And that's not an issue anymore with Game Time, because this feature allows you to get a preview of what the view will look like before you actually spend your money buying tickets, which is a great feature that I recommend you trying out yourself when you get onto the Game Time platform. A reminder, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the semifinal matches in Washington and the bronze medal, gold medal matches in the Olympics. Time now to get into the only match on the card that is not qualifying for the ATP card on Sunday. So we're going to look at the matchup between Cobolli and Korda. Now, Korda is a pretty big favorite. The lines did kind of explode overnight. I think Korda opened up at like minus 250, and now he's at minus 325. You're looking at Cobolli, though, at plus 270. For the actual spread, you have Korda minus 3.5. You have Cobolli plus 3.5. Over-under is around 22.5 games. For the set wagering, you have Korda in straight sets at around even money, and you have Cobolli to win a set at around plus 120. For the over-under, the over 2.5 sets is around plus 145. Now, for this matchup, I got to start off with the basics, because Korda is a massive favorite. Usually in a final of any ATP event, it's somewhere in the hundreds. He'll be 160, he'll be like 180, maybe sometimes minus 120. but usually you have a somewhat competitive match on paper. The odds makers are telling you directly, Korda's going to win. At minus 320 and change, that's kind of what they're suggesting. Now, on the other hand, we just saw in the gold medal match, Alcaraz had his money line ballooned upward entering the match, and he lost. So it's not a foolproof system if you just back the line movement. The point is, you have seen mostly competitive finals recently, not so much in this case, because Korda is expected to run through Caboli. Now, Korda so far in the event has been really, really good. He dodged a bullet as he ended up almost losing it to Kokkinakis, who blew two very easy put-away shots on match point to win. And then he got injured in the third set, started cramping, and Korda ended up winning via retirement. But that's the only time he's actually dropped a set in the entire event. And on top of that, it's the only time he's been broken in the entire event. He's been broken one time in 4 matches. So impressive serving by him. As for Caboli, he's been the opposite. He's had an absolute war in 3 straight matches. He went to 3 sets against Shelton, went to 3 sets against Mickelson, and went to 3 sets against Fokina. Fought off 5 match points in the matchup against Fokina. So both guys were living dangerously a couple rounds ago, and since that point, they have looked pretty sharp. However, I have to mention the time on court for both guys, because Court has been cruising in the last couple rounds. Caboli in the last 3 matches has played a total of roughly 8 hours on court. So exhaustion might be a serious problem for Caboli. Maybe. We'll see. He's very young, and so far he looks very fit because he has been able to come back from deficits despite playing a bunch of tennis. But I have to at least acknowledge he's been playing 8 hours of tennis for the last 3 rounds, and he's had no days off. He ended up playing the 31st, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. Now he's playing on the 4th, and he's had 8 hours of tennis in the last 3 matches. So not a great spot for Caboli. Maybe that's going to play a factor into the match if it turns into a competitive one late. But the real question is, do I agree with the line movement? Do I think Korda should have went from around minus 240, 250 to minus 325? I actually do. I think watching Korda against Thompson kind of was that moment where I realized Korda was the guy to beat in the event. We gave out Thompson to win in the actual match on the money line at plus 170, and that was not even close. Korda ended up burying him 6-4, 6-2. But as I was watching the match, I remembered that Thompson was still in very good form entering the event, and I thought Thompson was going to be dangerous based on how he ended up returning against Opelka and Perricard. Korda went through him like it was nothing. And it just felt like Korda, watching him play that match, was just fully in tune on everything. The serve was great. The return of serve was great. The forehand was great. The backhand was great. It seemed like Korda was just extremely solid. And it seemed like Korda, who we know is a head case, was actually kind of just on point throughout that entire match. And then I watched him against Tiafoe. Really the same story. It just seems like Korda right now is clicking on all cylinders. And I believe after this week, win or lose in the Sunday match, he will officially reach a career high 19 in the ATP rankings. So congrats to Korda, who's going to be ranking at his highest point in his career. He really does have top 10 upside. The issue is just mentally, he seems to crumble in big spots. No offense to Caboli, I don't think a 500 final against Caboli is the type of spot where mentally he would crack. So I think I am going to go with Korda in this one. Caboli's been solid, but I do think Korda's been in great form, and I think looking at both guys and how they've played this week, I think Korda's been objectively the better player. So I am going to go with Korda in this one. I am going to link to the under. To be honest, I think Korda wins in straight sets. I think Caboli is not a great server. He's been better so far in the event, but his second serve is still not great, and he had to fight off a couple of break points against Shelton. He almost lost in straight sets. He was really on the ropes there in the second set, and he was able to get out of it before eventually breaking in the 6-5 game to get the job done to win the second set and onward. But Caboli still had to battle in a couple of service games, and that's kind of the concern that I have with him here. As Shelton did have 5 break points against Caboli, he broke Caboli twice. Court has not been broken once again in 3 of the 4 matches he's played in the event. So Korda's serve has been better, and I do think that Caboli is a pretty good returner, but based on how Court has been serving and how he's been returning and how consistent he's been on both wings, this might be a very straightforward match here. This really might be like a 6-3, 6-4. I can see Korda winning pretty convincingly in this matchup, and even though Caboli is a guy that I do like, I really don't think it's a good spot for him. I think Korda's in better form, and with Caboli playing 8 hours in 3 days for 3 days straight, combined, and then he has to play again against a guy that's playing his best tennis of the year. It's a really bad spot. I'm going relatively chalky here. Give me Korda. I think he wins in straight sets, and I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the preview of the men's final for Washington. Time for the lock and dog picks. Before into that, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm does have a lot of great options for football. Football season's here, and college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model, or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. Decide what stats matter the most to you, and Rhythm can build you a custom model around it, or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm also uses AI projections and MIT data scientists. Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0, which is right around the corner, actually, if you actually look at the calendar. Remember to claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportscampbuckets.com. Sportscampbuckets.com. Sorry, THMM. We're also brought to you by Circus Survivor and Circa Millions. Circus Sports is back with Circus Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. They also just have a great opportunity to meet some of the guys at SGPN, because if you do not have a trip booked there for Las Vegas for football, Ultimate Cons weekends are a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy something performance the World Best Sportsbook from August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15, save you 15% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And a reminder, sign up in person at Circus Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with the proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 with the promo code SGP. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the final for Washington between Korda and Cobolli. Time for the lock and dog picks. Starting off with the lock, I am going to go with a team total here. Normally, I've been on the overs, but I am going to go with an under on this one. A reminder that so far this year, knock on wood, we are undefeated with lock and dog picks involving Cobolli. So hopefully that continues. We ended up cashing our lock the last episode with him. We took the over in that match against Shelton. This time we are going to look at an under. We are going to go Cobolli team total under 11.5 at -110. Korda's completed 3 full matches. Of course, the Kokkinakis one ended early, so I am not including that one. But the 3 fully completed matches that Korda's played in, his opponents have won less than 9 games. So he's been rolling. Beat Tiafoe 6-4, 6-4. Ended up beating Thompson 6-4, 6-2. He was in great form, and he beat Green very comfortably in his first match. Korda, though, has been very, very solid, and when he wins, he tends to win comfortably, at least in the case of the City Open, with the one exception of the Kokkinakis match. But Cobolli has played roughly 8 hours of tennis over the past 3 matches, with no days off in between. It's a really bad spot for him, and I think Korda's in line to take care of him pretty easily. 11.5 games is also a ton. There is a chance, even if Cobolli wins a set, let's say Cobolli wins like 6-4 in a set, there's no guarantee he ends up getting to 6 in the other 2 sets. He might lose like 6-3, 6-2, and at that point, you still win. So there are a couple ways to get there, actually, if it goes 3, if Korda blows him out at the end, and maybe that fatigue, plays a factor back in the final set and a half or so. But I do think you're looking at a spot where Cobolli is going to be fatigued, Korda's been too solid, and I just think there's a talent gap here. So I am going to go with Cobolli to struggle, not to mention the fact that it's Cobolli's first ever ATP final. I think he's going to be making a bunch of these because he's a very solid player. But nerves could play a factor potentially. It's arguably the biggest match of his career because he has a chance to win a title. And I do think that maybe that'll play a factor early. Maybe he comes out tight and gets broken in the first service game or 2. But with the overall nerves and the fatigue and Korda's recent form, I think 11.5's too high. I'll give me the team total under for Cobolli at -110 as my lock. For my dog, it's going to be very correlated, but there weren't really many options here for the lock and dog. Give me the Korda straight sets pick at +105. Korda's lost 1 set in the entire tournament, and he's been very solid in general. The serve's been great. He's been broken 1 time in the entire tournament, and we do know Cobolli's serve has been inconsistent. He'd managed to get through against Shelton, had to fight off some break points, but the point is Shelton did threaten in a couple of service games, and Shelton's not the best returner. Korda was all over Tiafoe's second serve in that match on Saturday night. I think you're looking at Korda pressuring a ton of Cobolli's service games, and I think with that being the case, eventually he will break through. Give me Korda to get the job done in straight sets here at +105 as my dog. So once again, my picks for the Washington final on Sunday. My lock's going to be on Cobolli team total under 11.5 games at -110. My dog will be on Korda to win in straight sets at +105. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. We're going to be back once again for Montreal, actually. We have a 1,000 event starting. I believe it's starting on the 6th. So we're going to have an episode previewing the event probably tomorrow night because I want to make sure that qualifying is done so I know exactly who's going to be in the field So we're probably going to have an episode tomorrow night for Montreal. A reminder, though, it's a Masters 1000 event, so there will be an episode for each round. A reminder there, we're going to cover the first round, second round, all the above. So going to be a bunch of episodes for Montreal. Going to warn you, though, most of the matches are going to be probably ending late, so we might be missing some lines actually previewing the next round. We'll do our best, though, to cover what we do have. Either way, though, find me on Twitter, RS Radio, find me on the NBA show, find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.